The rain hit the windows in relentless sheets, drumming against the roof like it wanted to drown out every other sound. I sat on the edge of the couch, fingers wrapped around a lukewarm mug of coffee, and watched the storm make the world outside almost unrecognizable. It was one of those nights where the house feels smaller, heavier, and somehow full of unsaid words. My husband, Daniel, was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, staring at nothing. I noticed him doing that a lot lately, just staring. I thought maybe it was work stress or one of his bad moods, but something about tonight felt different. There was a tension in the air I couldn't place, like the storm had spilled over into our living room. I'm Clara, 45, and I've spent the last 20 years building a life that looked perfect from the outside. Good job, beautiful home, a husband who was kind enough. But enough has a funny way of creeping into your bones until you start to wonder if it was ever really enough at all. Daniel is 20 years younger than me. 20 years. Most nights, it doesn't feel like a gap. He's lively, full of ideas, always a spark somewhere behind those stormy gray eyes. But tonight, he looked different. Older, maybe. Worn. I could see his jaw tighten when I finally said, "Daniel, what is it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to the window, letting the rain streak across the glass blur his face. "I need to tell you something," he said finally. The words were quiet, almost swallowed by the storm, but there was a weight in them that made my chest tighten. I set the mug down, my hands trembling slightly. Not from the cold, not entirely. "What is it?" I asked again, softer this time. A part of me already feared the answer, but I couldn't stop myself. He hesitated. His fingers fidgeted with the hem of his shirt, brushing it absent-mindedly, as if it could shield him from what he was about to say. "It's something I should have told you a long time ago," he admitted, voice catching. There was a pause, long enough for the silence to stretch, thick and suffocating. The lights flickered once, then twice. Shadows danced across the walls, twisting our familiar living room into something strange and fragile. And then he looked at me, the kind of look that makes your stomach drop, like a door just opened in a part of your life you thought was locked forever. I've been hiding something," he whispered. His eyes wouldn't leave mine, but his hands gripped the counter like he needed it to stay upright. "And I don't know if you can ever forgive me." My heart hammered, the rain outside matching the chaos inside. The storm had been loud all night, but now nothing mattered except that moment. The moment when I realized I might not know the man I married at all. I wanted to step closer. I wanted to ask him to tell me, but I froze. And in that frozen silence, the air between us thick with fear and anticipation, I knew life as I'd known it was about to change. The storm outside hadn't let up. In fact, it seemed to grow louder, each clap of thunder a heartbeat echoing through the house. I stayed on the couch, watching Daniel shift from one foot to the other, his fingers still nervously brushing the counter. There was something fragile about him tonight, something I hadn't seen in years. We hadn't always been this way. When we first met, he was full of life, too much, some people said, and I was cautiously drawn to it, maybe even desperate for it. 20 years is a lot of time for memories to pile up, for routines to settle into the cracks of a marriage. And yet, some nights, he still felt like a stranger slipping through my fingers. Daniel was younger, yes, and that gap had always been there, quietly humming beneath our laughter and small talk. At first, it was thrilling, his world so different from mine, full of energy, of things I had forgotten to notice in myself. But now, as the rain slid down the windows in sheets and the wind rattled the frames, I felt the weight of all those years, all those small misunderstandings, piling up in the space between us. I tried to remember the last time he'd laughed without reservation, the last time I'd felt completely at ease with him. I couldn't, and that thought made my chest tighten. Maybe this was what he'd been hiding, something that could shatter the careful balance we'd built. The apartment smelled faintly of damp wood and coffee, and the soft hum of the fridge was the only other sound besides the storm. It used to be a place of comfort, but tonight it felt like a stage, a place where truths would either be revealed or buried forever. I reached out, almost impulsively, but pulled back my hand. He noticed, though. His eyes flicked to mine, and for a moment, I could see a flicker of regret. Or was it fear? There was a story behind those gray eyes, one he hadn't told me, one that had been waiting for the right stormy night to emerge. I wanted to ask him directly what it was, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I waited, letting the silence stretch, letting the rain do its work on the windows, letting the tension grow just enough to make the eventual confession impossible to ignore. And in that quiet, watching him wrestle with himself, I realized that this wasn't just about a secret. It was about everything we'd built, everything we hadn't said, everything that had been ignored in the cracks of ordinary life. Tonight, it all felt dangerously close to unraveling. Daniel finally let out a shaky breath, and the sound made the hair on my arms stand up. He turned to face me fully, a shadow in the dim light of the living room. "Clara," he said, voice barely above the storm, "there's something about me you don't know, and it's not small." And with that, the moment froze, heavy and unyielding, leaving me staring at him, my heart thudding, unsure whether I wanted to hear the truth or fear it. Daniel's words hung in the air, heavier than the storm outside. I could feel the weight of them pressing down on my chest, a quiet insistence that something had changed between us, something I hadn't seen coming. I don't know how to say this," he began, eyes darting to the floor and then back to mine, as if he was measuring each word for danger. "It's not what you think, I swear. But I can't keep it in anymore." The room felt smaller, every shadow from the flickering lights stretching across the walls like it was listening in. I wanted to reach for him, to demand he just say it, but a strange hesitation rooted me to the spot. There was fear in his silence, but there was also anticipation, like he needed me to brace myself. "I met someone," he said finally, voice low, almost a whisper. My stomach dropped, and my first instinct was anger, betrayal. But then I realized he hadn't said what happened, only that someone existed in his story. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't decide if I should scream or cry. He ran a hand through his hair, nervous, fidgeting like a younger man caught in something far too big for him. Not in a way you'd think. "It's complicated. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it, and maybe I could have," but his voice trailed off, swallowed by the storm. I wanted to ask him who, what, when, but something in a way he avoided my eyes told me it wasn't a simple answer. It never is. There's always layers, always the parts you see and the parts you never do. For a moment, the apartment was silent except for the rain. Then I heard my phone buzz, a message lighting up the screen across the room. I didn't check it. Something told me this, whatever this was, needed to happen first. The tension made my chest ache. I noticed the way his hands trembled slightly when he brushed them over the counter, the way his jaw clenched as though holding himself together. I realized in that moment that he was as trapped in this confession as I was in my fear of it. "You should have told me earlier," I said finally, voice trembling despite my attempt at calm. I stopped because I didn't know if I wanted to hear the rest or pretend nothing had happened. He swallowed hard, eyes locked on mine now, desperate for a response, or maybe forgiveness. "I didn't know how," he admitted, and for the first time in 20 years, I saw him as he was, unsure, scared, and unguarded. And just like that, the room seemed to shrink even more, the storm outside echoing the storm inside. Every clap of thunder reminded me that something had shifted. Nothing could go back to the way it was. And in that heavy silence, I realized that the night was far from over, and neither of us knew how it would end. The rain had slowed, but the storm inside the apartment hadn't let up. Daniel stood by the window now, hands pressed against the glass, as if he could hold the world, or maybe himself, together through sheer will. I watched him, heart hammering, every instinct screaming that tonight was a turning point. "I need to know everything," I said finally, my voice shaking despite my attempt at calm. No more pauses, no more hiding. He didn't respond right away. His shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I wondered if he might vanish into the night, leave the confession unfinished. Then he turned slowly, eyes glimmering with something raw, almost desperate. "I thought I could control it," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I thought if I kept it small, kept it buried, maybe it wouldn't matter. Control it? Buried. I echo, my throat tight. Daniel, what are you talking about? He took a step closer, but stopped, hesitant. The space between us felt electric, loaded with fear, regret, and something I couldn't name. I've been hiding a part of my life, he admitted. Something I never wanted you to see. Not because I don't love you, but because I was afraid you'd stop. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Afraid I'd stop. The words echoed, but I didn't know what they meant. Did he mean he had another life? Another person? My mind raced, panic rising like the tide. I need details, I said, voice trembling. I can't just imagine this. You have to tell me. He nodded slowly, running a hand through his hair again, a nervous gesture I'd seen too many times. I didn't know how to tell you without destroying everything we've built, but I can't live with it anymore. I need you to know, even if it changes everything. The apartment felt colder now, shadows stretching across the walls, the remnants of the storm casting strange shapes around us. I noticed the faint scent of rain-soaked clothes, the lingering aroma of the coffee we never finished. Every little detail made the moment more real, more unbearable. I took a step closer, trying to read him, but he flinched slightly, like I was too close or maybe just seeing too much. The vulnerability in his eyes made my chest tighten. Clara, I need you to understand, he said, voice breaking. I'm trying, I whispered, but I wasn't. I was terrified, afraid of the truth, afraid of what I might feel, afraid of what we might become. And then, just as he opened his mouth to continue, there was a sudden crash outside, a tree branch smashing against the roof, sending a shower of rain through the kitchen window. Daniel jumped back, startled, and I felt my heart lurch. The storm, both outside and inside, had reached a breaking point, and in that instant, I realized there was no turning back. Whatever he was about to confess, it would change everything. The crash of the branch had left a small gash in the kitchen window, letting in a cold gust that made me shiver. Daniel rubbed at his face, and for the first time I saw him really unravel, not just hesitation, but raw fear. He swallowed hard and stepped closer. Clara, there's more, he said, and the tremor in his voice made my stomach drop. More, I echoed, gripping the back of the couch for support. My heart was hammering so loudly I was sure he could hear it. What else is there? He hesitated, eyes flicking around the room as if the walls themselves might judge him. It's not just something I did, he began slowly. It's about someone I met. Someone I let into my life in a way I shouldn't have. I felt my pulse spike. Every instinct screamed that this was bigger than I imagined. I wanted to step back, to put space between us, but my legs felt frozen. Daniel, tell me, I whispered. He ran a hand through his hair, brushing wet strands off his forehead. Her name is Lila. I met her a few months ago, at work. I don't even know how to explain it. But I didn't want it to become real. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep it in the background. The room spun slightly, the broken window rattling in the wind. My hands tightened around the couch. Handle it? Keep in the background? What does that even mean? I asked, voice trembling between anger and disbelief. I didn't touch anything, if that's what you're thinking, he said quickly, desperation creeping into his tone. I just talked to her, met her sometimes, and I kept thinking I could control it, keep it separate. But every time I saw her, he trailed off, eyes glistening with something I couldn't name. Guilt? Obsession? Fear? My mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was saying. He hadn't betrayed me physically, but the emotional line he'd crossed, keeping someone else so close, so present in his thoughts, that hurt in a way I hadn't anticipated. The very idea of him confiding in someone else, letting her into the parts of himself I thought were only mine, made my chest tighten. And now, I asked cautiously, needing to understand where this went, needing him to be honest. Now, he said, voice breaking, I can't stop thinking about it. About her. About what I almost did, and about you. I don't want to lose us, Clara. I love you, but his words faltered, drowned by the wind and the sound of the rain hitting the broken window pane. I wanted to step forward to hold him, to demand answers. But the space between us felt like a canyon. And in that quiet, I realized the storm wasn't just outside anymore. It had taken over everything we thought we knew about each other. He looked at me then, eyes wide and raw. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop it before it started. And now, I don't know if it's too late. The apartment felt colder than ever, shadows stretching across the walls. And in that moment, I understood nothing would ever be the same. Not tonight. Not after this. The apartment was quiet, but it felt heavy, as if every wall was holding its breath. Daniel's confession had left the room raw, charged with a tension I couldn't escape. I sank onto the couch, hands gripping the cushions, trying to steady my breathing. My mind spun with everything he'd just said, and the realization that I might not ever fully understand him again. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I finally asked, voice low, trembling. "Why keep her all this in the background?" He sat on the edge of the couch opposite me, head in his hands. "Because I was scared," he admitted, and for the first time in years, I saw him as he truly was, uncertain, vulnerable, human. Scared of losing you. Scared of what it would do to us. I swallowed, tears threatening. "Do you even love me?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. His eyes met mine, wide, glistening. "Ido, more than I can say." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "But I let something grow that shouldn't have. And now, I don't know if love is enough to fix it." A gust of wind rattled the broken window, carrying rain inside. I shivered and pulled my sweater tighter. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside, and I felt the weight of years, decisions, and secrets pressing down on me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Just breathing, just staring. And then I realized this was the turning point. Everything had been laid bare. There was nowhere to hide, no half-truths left. Only choices, only what came next. I stood abruptly, pacing the small living room, trying to think, to process. I don't know if I can forgive you, or if I even want to," I said, voice breaking. "You let her into your life, into your thoughts, into your heart." And I stopped feeling my own words falter. "I loved you. I still do. But I'm not sure it's enough anymore." He looked up at me, eyes haunted, lips trembling. "I know, and I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to lose you, Clara." I paused, taking in the storm, the broken window, the faint smell of rain and coffee. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't expected. The secret wasn't just his, it was ours. A reflection of all the cracks in our marriage, all the unspoken fears and longings we'd ignored. I sat back down, a trembling hand brushing his, and he didn't pull away. "We'll figure this out," I whispered, not because I knew how, but because I had to try. Just as the words left my lips, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at it and froze. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. "We need to talk about Daniel." The storm outside had passed, but a new one was arriving, and somehow it felt like it was only just beginning. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of streetlights. Inside the apartment, the air felt lighter, though the weight of the night lingered. Daniel sat beside me on the couch, hands loosely entwined with mine, and for the first time, I felt a fragile sense of calm. We didn't speak for a long moment. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was reflective, a quiet acknowledgement of everything we had just survived. I thought about the storm, the broken window, the confessions that had left us both exposed. And I realized that, somehow, we had made it through the hardest part, honesty. I read the message. Daniel said quietly, eyes on his hands. "It's from Lila." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "And what now?" He met my gaze, and there was no fear in his eyes, only a kind of clarity. "I'm ending it. Completely. There's no more background, no more what-ifs. I want to focus on us, on repairing what I broke." I felt the tension in my chest ease slightly, though it didn't disappear entirely. "I want to try too," I admitted. "But we need time, and space, and honesty always. No more hiding." He nodded, a small, hopeful smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I can do that. I promise." For the next few hours, we talked, not just about Lila, not just about secrets, but about us. About the quiet frustrations, the unspoken longings, the ways we'd grown apart without even noticing. It wasn't easy. Tears came, voices broke, but slowly, we started to untangle the knots that had been tying us up for years. By the time morning light crept through the repaired blinds, there was a tentative peace between us. The apartment smelled faintly of wet wood and coffee, and the storm outside felt like a memory rather than a threat. I sipped the fresh cup Daniel had made for me, noticing the small smile he gave me when our fingers brushed. "I think we can really start over," I said softly. He nodded, "one day at a time, and we'll do it together." There is still work to do, still trust to rebuild. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. The storm had tested us, revealed our weaknesses, and brought old fears to the surface. And yet, in its aftermath, we had found something stronger, truth, and a willingness to face the future together. As I watched Daniel clear the last drops of rain from the windowsill, I realized that life wasn't perfect, and we weren't perfect, but maybe that was okay. Love, after all, wasn't about flawless moments. It was about showing up, even after the storm, even when everything feels uncertain. And for tonight, that was enough.